This was an item that I had talked with staff council about, and I'd like for staff to give a presentation, and they have put this together. Daniel Christotis and Brandon Cook have been working on this to give us an update of where we are on our drainage, not only currently, but where we're heading in the future on that. So I'm going to turn that over. I think, Daniel, you're going to give the presentation. Welcome.
Yes, sir. Good morning, City Council. Is the audio clear? Can everyone hear me? Okay, good. Excellent. Good morning, City Council. Thank you for the opportunity to develop and share the Drainage Vision 2020 for the City of Galveston. First, I'd like to thank the City Council for their proactive leadership in drainage. Drainage investment in Galveston provides a far broader benefit than the city itself. During Hurricane Harvey, the Galveston International Airport kept the heart of Houston, Texas City, and all others in the region alive, while Harvey and International Airport were flooded. Therefore, drainage investment in Galveston provides a regional, national, and a global benefit because Houston is the heart of the oil and gas economy in planet Earth. Galveston has been through its major challenges, but our proactive City Council turned these challenges into opportunities. After Hurricane Ike, which devastated the city started its rebuilding with the Ike recovery funds we received for repairing the damage to our infrastructure. Majority of these projects were in full motion in 2014. Drainage infrastructure resiliency improvement started as a subsidiary to the streets Ike recovery projects and has advanced to its primary focus in the city today. Our City Council has consistently shown a strong emphasis on drainage infrastructure investment and has empowered city staff to find innovating funding mechanisms such as the city and county bonds, IDC, CDBG, FEMA, and TDM grants. We'd also like to say a special thank you to our citizens who approved the bond election of 2017, a great milestone to improve our roads, water, and sanitary sewer infrastructure. Drainage was a sub or minor component of these projects, with the major drainage projects approaching final design and construction. So the improvement can be evaluated by our citizens after these projects have been built. Our lessons learned during Ike recovery and bond projects implementations and the weathering of the numerous storms since Ike has advanced our team, thank you team, to develop a 2020 drainage vision for the future. Next slide, please. Galveston is unique. Galveston's unique challenges have advanced us to develop a unique 2020 drainage vision plan. Comparison. Houston is only 3 times longer than Galveston, but has a tax base that is 100 times the size of Galveston for the same length that it spans. This means we have to provide roads, drainage, water, and sewer service for 1/3 the length of Houston with 100th the tax base of Houston. So where does the funding come for drainage? Let's look at service fees. Looking at our fees for right-of-way construction drainage permits and drainage culvert installations, these fees are a very small fraction of the cost of drainage permit and field installation services by a world-class, most efficient staff. Talking about environmental uniqueness of Galveston, our terrain is flat, leads to slow drainage. Water cannot flow uphill. There's no magic, no miracles. It has to follow the natural laws of gravity unless there is a pump station. And Galveston is bounded by the Gulf of Mexico and the Bay. We are affected by high tides and storm surges and take the first hit from hurricanes and storms. Our rainfall is high intensity, short time span, and our city is so historical and wonderful that you'll never know what you'll find when a trench is open to install a drainage pipe, even though we perform feasible investigations in advance. Next slide, please. So the presentation outline. In this presentation, the focus will be the vision, the solution, and its implementation. A model solution is in design right now. It has never been done before in the Houston-Galveston region, and its implementation island-wide could have far-reaching benefits to Project Galveston's leadership in drainage solutions. I said leadership, and I mean what I say. It's the council's leadership. It's the citizens' leadership. It's the City of Galveston elite team's leadership. Let's go on to the next slide, please. Thank you. Developing the Drainage Vision 2025 for Galveston. Too often, teams try to find solutions before understanding the problem, and that leads to a path of failure. Galveston has been a special graveyard for contractors, engineers, and many others because they did not understand Galveston is unique and tried to implement a Houston, Austin, Boston solution to our unique and historical Galveston Island, and they failed. Solutions need to be realistic and cost-effective, providing the best return on investment for the community. Now, nothing happens without funding. And to get funding and compete for funds with the entire United States, we have to communicate to the citizens and the grant agency that our Galveston unique solution provides the best return on investment. Providing that communication needs extensive research, conceptual design, modeling and presentation of a grant application to the funding agency, bond election, and addressing communities' questions factually. We cannot secure funding with emotional adjectives and qualitative statements. It has to be an engineering analysis. Once we secure the funding, we are on the clock to implement the solution. We've heard the word drainage so many times. The sound is deafening. Is it deafening? The D in drainage is not do something. It represents designing the effective, feasible, and cost-sensitive solution for the community. The I in drainage represents investment. And E, the last word in drainage, is the exit. Our drainage has to exit our outfalls so it can flow into the bay or the bayous. The next slide, please. Okay, going to challenges. Here are some of our challenges. Pipe clogs, high tides, outfall pipe clogging, marine life, barnacles. Cleaning the outfalls will be temporary and last until the next high tide. We had 63 high tide events in 2019, more than any other year. Removing marine growth with chisels and hammers will only damage the pipe and result in collapse of the outfall pipe and the outfall bulkhead. Uncertainties abound also with increasing rainfall intensities. So we talked about the challenging problem. Next slide, please. The challenging environment. All of these are facts, but the inadequate system capacity, which is the fifth bullet, is not because somebody made a mistake. Our storm systems were designed for rainfall intensities that are a fraction of what we see today. The tidal backflow and marine growth further restricts drainage. There is a viable solution, but it is expensive, and the city has been aggressive in applying for grant funding and has secured their first regional pump station grant of its kind for a stormwater pump station in the region to minimize the burden to our community, since the majority of this project is funded with state and federal grants. Top national engineer from Washington, D.C. was deputed by FEMA to question the city engineer on the adequacy of the grant application because the modeling was done in-house. FEMA acknowledged that the grant application hydraulic modeling performed by the City of Galveston engineering was superior to the billion-dollar modeling that FEMA had performed for Galveston when the facts showed up in time. Okay, next slide, please. So this is about climate change. Relative number of extreme events has increased by a factor of 40 in the last 70 years. These events have been characterized by increasing frequency of high tides and intense single-day precipitation events that have typically been extremely heavy downpours. We have to be realistic. We cannot make qualitative statements. Putting a dome over the entire city of Galveston is not an option. Next slide, please. Here is our challenge in the next slide. As you can see, the rain chooses to come many times exactly when there is a high tide, about 3.5 feet in the bay. So instead of water flowing in the right direction towards the exit to the bay, the outfalls, it starts flowing backwards. And when it starts flowing backwards, you have the sediment and the marine life that clog the outfalls. Now, we didn't sit there like awesome engineers and look at nature and say, it's your problem. We took the bull by the horns, as we do in Texas every time. And we have applied for a grant for the South Shores pump station, where it backs up all the time during high tide on 59 streets. It's $48 million, and we are applying for it. So most of it can be funded with federal and state funds. It's in process. Next slide, please. So we talk about pump stations. Are we making Galveston the guinea pig? By no means, sir. No means, ma'am. Both Texas City and Port Arthur have stormwater pump stations. Louisiana and Palm Beach have pump stations. Miami Beach have pump stations. Why didn't we do it so far? We are doing it now. So citizens, you should be proud of your city. Both cities are affected by high tides. Galveston is no exception. Next slide, please. Pump stations in conjunction with gravity drainage systems. As I said, I used in Palm Beach, Florida. The city developed an approach unique to Galveston and applied for and was awarded a grant from HMGP for the 14th Street pump station in conjunction with local match. We expect the pump station to be in construction late next year to serve as a model for our citizens, island-wide, nationwide, and globally. This is a large pump station, about 40 times the size of our wastewater plant, which means it rains 40 times more than the amount of water that we drink. Let's go to the next slide, please. Galveston outfalls get clogged, but pump stations can keep it from getting clogged and pump at 4 times a gravity pipe system can, promoting effective drainage even during seasonal high tides and heavy rainfall events. But pump stations are cost prohibitive without grant funding to supplement local match. So how do you keep the aquatic life and sediment out? We put some duckbill valves, as you see in the next few slides. So here is the concept of our pump station that is in 30% design. Let's go to the next slide, please. Here's the pump station in design for the 14th Street project. Stormwater flow into the pump station is by gravity and is pumped out by pressure flow into the bay. As you can see, we have 8 pumps in this pump station and 1 little jockey pump for low flow. And this pump station will pump at 4 times what the same pipe can pump. It's a tide control, barnacle control, aquatic life control, sediment control, all in one pump station. Let's go on to the next slide, please. There's one of the possible solutions for tide backflow control. One way, it goes out, the beak of the duck closes, and it doesn't go back in. Let's go on to the next slide, please. So I said 14th Street Pump Station is our model. And now that we know it will work and it has advanced and we've had a federal grant with Tessa's help and the team's help, we are advancing into the CDBG MIT grant for 3 more pump stations. So what you're looking at is our drainage master plan. The line in purple is our proposed 37th Street pump station project boundary in our grant application. The lines in red are pipelines and are a concept portraying what is recommended within the project boundary to convey the drainage to the pump station. This is straight from our drainage master plan. The lines shown are conceptual, and when awarded the grant, we will actually perform the surveying, field surveying, design. It will be boots on the ground, and we will perform the actual design, and the sizes might be different from our master plan. Now, the master plan was based on the NOAA Atlas storm frequencies in 2007. 13 years have passed. Last time we looked at the master plan was in 2014. Design standards have increased. Therefore, we need to update the old master plan to our current Atlas 14 NOAA storm frequencies per our latest drainage code. Also, based on the condition of the outfalls from the recent assessment report, we may have to prioritize from our master plan and embark on larger projects to upsize and replace the existing outfalls. If we try to clean the barnacles and chisel and hammer, the outfalls will collapse. We have to replace them, make them bigger. The storms have also changed the landscape at the west end, and we have to evaluate, identify, and prioritize drainage projects citywide with engineering and community input. Karankawa Beach, Sea Isle, we have to evaluate all of those subdivisions. Next slide, please. So what you're looking at is the 51st Street pump station that is also going into our grant application. Next slide, please. We can go to the next slide. So that's our South Shore that's been a candidate of tidal backflow control. Next slide, please. Here is a ring levy concept, if designed and with good coordination with the city and community input, could function effectively with our stormwater pump station. Our pump station is being designed at the 1415th Street location in conjunction with the U.S. Army Corps permit for the outfall, and we have 3 other pump stations, the grant application that will also require this permit. Next slide, please. So now we are getting to the meat of our Vision Criteria 2025. So yellow, green, and blue, address, identify, and reduce. And the key thing is flooding. But we just don't jump to solutions because a lot of people have died in Texas and all over the world because someone fell into a ditch and his brother jumped in and he died and 7 people followed. We don't do that thing with drainage, sir. Not like that, ma'am. We use engineering practice. We don't use qualitative statements. We quantify the problem. We find the problem and we fix it. That's why we are Texas. Let's go on to the next slide, please. So this is our Galveston Island-wide Vision 2025. So the first thing we are going to do in 2021 is we are going to take a look at our master plan, develop a new master plan that will attack the east end and the west end. Based on the master plan, we would come up with new projects that will benefit the east, the central, and the west end. And we will go to the citizens and ask for their feedback. And engineering analysis and community input is important. And this will be an integrated City of Galveston-wide list of projects that everyone needs. No, we are not going to plan on keeping the street dry because that would take trillions of dollars and has never been done in the world. What we are going to do is keep the water out of the garage. How? It'll be based on a 25-year storm where emergency vehicles can still travel in a 25-year storm, but the water will stay in the city right of way and not enter the garage. The key would be new pump stations, new outfalls, new backflow valves. Let's go on to the next slide, please. So the question is, Mr. Christodos, good slides. What did you do so far? You've been the city engineer for the last 6 years. Well, this is what we did. Right after Harvey, the city addressed the source of its resilience, the Drainage Criteria Manual. The city, which leads by example, implemented the new drainage criteria on its select drainage capital projects, and the public works team, in conjunction with the proactive development community we always cherish, has been innovating low-impact lid technologies to reduce the cost of service, which is already low, and also to reduce the cost of capital and economic development. Examples, the Oleander development, the storage facility on 67th and Stewart Road, several hotels on Seawall, cruise parking lots near Harborside have incorporated the low-impact development concept to advance aesthetics, increase the permeable landscape, and address drainage capacity on-site to reduce off-site street flooding. We have a vision, but we are also going to keep the problems from stopping our pathway towards the vision. So we are helping developers with innovative approach, things outside the envelope. Let's move on to the next slide, please. So we've been talking to developers, and we have been proposing behind the curbs bioswales to reduce the stormwater entering our system. Next slide, please. We are going to have some awesome aesthetical greenscape, stormwater planter boxes which provide detention. Next slide, please. So there's me in a fire truck pumping water onto the ground, and nothing runs off to the city roadway system. It all goes below ground. How is it possible, Mr. Christodos? Let's go on to the next slide. This is called low impact development. It's a paved drain system. What you see is a half moon pipe below the paved drain surface, and in conjunction with gravel, which is a couple of feet, we provide on-site detention. The city will never see this water on the road. Next slide, please. So here's our list of projects that we've done so far. I think we can reduce the, all the awesome team on this slide, so the last column would show up. But if not, I can do that too. So our city council and our team has focused on strategic drainage projects to provide the best benefit to our citizens. That is why careful planning after the completion of Ike roads and drainage projects led to the passing of the 2017 drainage bond election, which included two major drainage projects, 18th and Church. These primary drainage projects, 18th and Church, will be very effective during the typical heavy rainfall events and occasional high tides. The Church Street project will include the installation of a new 37th Street outfall and repair of the bulkhead, followed by pipe cleaning from the new outfall to the 37th and Church Street intersection. The 18th Street project will benefit a drainage area extending from 23rd Street to 17th Street. A diversion structure will be built to divert flow to the future 18th Street pump station, which we will apply for a grant, and if approved, that'll happen. We are in the process of identifying a good match. We also did the outfall study from the bond election, which was completed in 2019. Most of the outfalls were identified and found to be clogged with marine life, barnacles, and debris from tidal backflow, which was based on the study we performed. So future planning is in process for the outfalls. So let's go to the secondary drainage projects. These were not intended to be drainage projects on the left side. They were roads that were affected by Ike and roads from the regional road assessment. And since we also had utilities, water and sewer, the focus was to repair these roads and address water and sewer and also do some minor drainage. So these were not intended to be drainage projects. It's like you open the faucet and you plug the sink. Now, if you leave it and go watch TV, the sink is going to overflow. That's exactly what we did. We put some inlets and pipes and provided some detention, but we didn't take it all the way because we had a Vision 2025 coming up. And on the last column, which is actually hidden by me and my team, we have the first one, the future drainage projects is the last column. And the first one in the future drainage projects on the third column is the 2021 Drainage Master Plan and the 3 grant applications you just saw. So we didn't lose anything, 37th, 51st, and South Shores Pump Station. So let's look at some awesome photographs on the recent hurricane events that happened in Galveston and how are we going to address that reality. Next slide, please. This is 16th and Harborside, and that is in part going to be addressed by the 14th Street Pump Station. And 15th Street is going to have a pump station. There's a pipe running down the middle, a big box down the middle, and that's about $33 million. Next slide, please. This is around 19th Street, and the 18th Street project will have some benefits. Next slide, please. So this is our favorite. My kids love to go to Strand. They'd rather go to Strand than go to Disneyland. They love Strand. We have been busy with the CDBG MIT grants and have not defined boundaries to address the drainage in this area. We are just starting the process and will review our drainage master plan and recent hydraulic models and supplement it as needed to optimize the grant application focused on this area. This area will be covered in the BRIC grant. BRIC stands for Building Resilient Infrastructure for Communities. Downtown Galveston, you haven't been forgotten. You are in our heart. We are coming back. Next slide, please. The location of 19th and Mechanic, hopefully our police chief will take care of people like who drive in those trucks flushing water. And the project, 18th Street, will have indirect benefits to this location. Next slide, please. So why did we choose the 37th Street project, 37th and Harborside grant? We just didn't pull it out of a hat. There was engineering, there was analysis of history, recent storm events. We also analyzed our drainage master plan, and we came up with the 37th Street pump station. This is without the pump station. In the future, when we get the grant and build that pump station, I will compare this photo with the photo that we have with the pump station. Next slide, please. Again, on the next slide, you'll see 25th and Strand, our favorite spot. So this will be part of the BRIC grant in the future, and downtown, we will be addressing pretty much every location in downtown that is cost-effective and feasible and implementable. Next project, please. 19th and Broadway. This will also have benefits from the 18th Street project that will reach to this location. Now, the important thing that I didn't mention is the city has excellent relationship with TxDOT, the state, and our area engineer in TxDOT has been very helpful. We financed drainage studies on Broadway, starting from 16th Street all the way to 48th Street, and TxDOT funded the design and construction. TxDOT was acting as a dam. It's been lowered by a few inches, and now when they are done, water can go from the south to the north. We have some bridge blocks, and that is also going to help. So the next slide, please, and that will be the 51st Street grant application. Why did we choose it? We chose the 51st Street grant application, one of the reasons because of this photograph. One of the previous public works directors said Harvey was actually a 25-year storm for Galveston, and that fits our drainage criteria. We have a $78 million grant application for the 51st Street pump station that is in process. We reviewed the drainage master plan. Next slide, please. And this is also going to be part of the CDBG MIT grant that the team is helping us with. Next slide, please. This is at 50th and Broadway. This is a famous slide because it's the South Shores pump station will help with this project. I'm sure I'm going to miss the canoes, but we don't need to have people go in canoes on streets which need to be having cars driving and the silt coming back. We have a $48 million South Shores pump station grant application in process, and we are going to use streets for what they are intended to be. Let's go on to the next few slides, and that'll be the area for the 3 grant applications. There's a South Shore pump station grant application, and when you have Harborside and Broadway flooded, this is going to provide benefits, a 61st Street evacuation route for the entire city of Galveston. Next slide, please. 37th Street pump station extending benefits citywide. Now, what I forgot to mention is that hashed area that you see in all these slides is the project area in which we'll be installing pipes and pump stations, but the benefits will be citywide. Next slide, please. That's the 51st Street pump station. and that will provide 3 evacuation routes. The hatched area, which envelops the Island Community Center, our main hub for offsite evacuation, UTMB, Shoals International Airport, all of those will function, and we will have 3 major evacuation routes. Now, the last slide is the bridge pier that washed away in Vita. I don't know why I put it there, but I just thought we can understand the consequence of storms. But that's a slide for questions. Council, city manager, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. I also have Brandon and Tessa is on the line. So please, we appreciate questions, or we'll be really heartbroken.
Daniel, thank you very much. Great presentation and very, very detailed. I greatly appreciate it. I really appreciate you. You're welcome. I really appreciate your evaluation of drainage to not only be drains and outfalls and things like that, but to consider pervious surfaces and other things, and trees and other landscaping approaches that helps throughout the island also. That's going to be, it's a multifactorial approach, I think, to drainage, and that's the way it's going to have to be here on the island. Council, any questions for Daniel? You're welcome.
Yes, sir. Mr. Listowski? Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Thank you, Daniel, for your presentation. You are, it was the most enthusiastic drainage presentation I've heard, so I know that we have the right person for the job.
Thank you.
This is the 2025, kind of master drainage plan. What is our timeline on actually getting some of this actually in the ground and actually up and functioning? Can you just give me a kind of a rundown on a timeline on when some of this stuff will happen?
Yes, sir. The 3 pump stations in application, the 37th, 51st, and the South Shores Pump Station, I believe Tessa could correct me, but I believe the grant award will be notified sometime next year, probably in summer. And the 14th Street Pump Station is already in process. The Drainage Master Plan is 2021 is already in our capital improvement budget, so we can do that in-house. The team would prefer doing it externally. Some of it has been done, and we'll be identifying projects from the Drainage Master Plan. The 18th Street, as you know, 18th and Church Street is getting into construction. We should be well underway on those projects in the next few weeks. Broadway drainage is in process. And we also have a 35th Street project from Post Office to Broadway that is also going to be in process, and a subcomponent. There are a few projects like the 37th Street project from Broadway to Seawall, and based on our enhanced knowledge now about drainage, we are trying to optimize it for the city of Galveston so we get the most benefit from drainage. Brandon, did I forget any other projects and timelines?
No, I think you covered quite an array of them. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Listowski, did I answer your question?
Yes, and so the pump stations are they are we have to get the grants to do the pump stations because they are very costly. What are our chances of getting those grants, and is that something that we feel pretty confident that we'll get, or is that pretty much up in the air at this point?
Actually, what we did is we tried our best to make sure that our engineering analysis and our equity is such that we will score about 65 on all of the 3 projects. I believe getting a score about 65 is a milestone, and very quantitatively, our awesome team has been helpful, and we have crossed 65 on all of these 3 projects, which puts them in consideration and evaluation for all 3 grants. We do have to compete with cities nationwide, but we have experiences from the 14th Street Pump Station, and our team is an awesome team. So we will meet the challenge head on and help the grant agency
and John
fund
Paul,
all 3 projects if feasible.
And John Paul, more specifically, we've teed up 3 projects. We've got them in the pipeline. we feel strongly that we'll get at least one, and then the other two are teed up for future ones, and we'll keep going, and every time we'll keep adding, so we'll eventually get them all. The chances of us getting, and Tessa's the expert on this, the chances of us getting all three probably slim at this point, but we feel like we're definitely in the running for one, if not two, and we're going to keep teeing them up and keeping them out there, and we're not going to stop until we get them all.
And the first one is the 14th Street pump station?
14th Street's already awarded, so we're good. We're going to 14th Street. The three that are in the box right now are 37th, 51st, and South Shore.
In that order?
Let
me clarify here. So the way that this is going to work with the GLO is these are due the 28th. They will score them, and they will take the highest score as how they scored the criteria on which ones are selected. This is a statewide competition, and there's going to be 2 rounds of a statewide competition. So they will select, and the way they're doing this is any jurisdiction that qualifies and gets a score of at least 65 points, all of those jurisdictions that score a minimum 65 points will be awarded one project as long as there is enough money to do so. And they will award those projects until their money runs out. So they will award everyone their first project before they award a second project. That is why we are hopeful that we will get one project. Hopefully we will get 2. This first round of competition. Yes.
But 14th Street's already been awarded. We're talking, the 3 you're talking about are 51st, 37th, and South Shore. And what John Paul's asking is what's the priority order on those?
The priority will be based on whichever of the 3 projects for CDBG scores the highest.
So priority is set by the GLO?
Yes, we can tell them that we want 51st Street, or we prefer 37th, or we prefer South Shore. They're going to award it based on which one they score the highest, based on our score. We would like to, if we'd like to tell them which one we want, that's not going to be an option for us, unfortunately. And then they will come back next spring, and then they will open up the second round of funding. They will award $1 billion in this first round and $1 billion next spring.
Yeah,
great.
And the good news is, John Paul, is that we as a city had undertaken this a while back, and getting Daniel and his team putting together plans. So we think we're a little ahead of some other cities who may not necessarily have engineering ready or design ready projects like we do.
Okay, great work on this. It's going to be, if we can get this implemented, it's going to be a great achievement for Galveston.
David.
Let me ask this question one more time. What is the timeline for completion of the 15th Street project?
Yes, sir. Oh, Tessa, go ahead. She's got it in the back of her hands.
Yes, let me answer that question. The engineering will be completed on the 15th Street pump station in late spring. Once that engineering is completed and the benefit cost analysis is completed, the engineering and cost analysis will be submitted back to FEMA, at which time FEMA will review that. And once they red stamp it and authorize phase 2, we will be awarded phase 2. That money is sitting there, but once the final approval is received back to the city, then we will be able to start with construction. So we estimate that once late next spring, that is turned back over to them, we will have 6 months. So late 2021, we could be in construction.
Okay, can you give me an update on the timeline for the 18th Street drainage project? Because several people have had this question. We've seen the activity, like Daniel referred to this, at 18th and Church, or 18th and I think it was 18th and Church, where Texas Gas is deepening the lines to prepare for the box drains to come through there. When do we anticipate start to digging on 18th Street? And are we starting at the north end moving south, south end moving north?
We are going to start from the south end and move north. I'm sorry, start from the north end and move south. We want to start at the outfall. There is a little conflict with existing railroad track at the Port of Galveston, and the Port Chief Engineer, Jeffrey Thompson, has been very helpful. And they have some port plans that got just finalized, and it's in conflict, but it's a minor conflict. And once we have that worked through in the next couple of weeks, I think within the next 1 month, we should have some activity, mobilization. I have a feeling that actually turning dirt is going to be the first week of January.
Okay, very good, very good. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Jackie?
I wanted to commend you for your presentation. I liked it a lot, and it was quite informative. I also wanted to ask about the low impact things that you have there. The city is being asked to take care of an awful lot of water, both that comes from the sky and also from the bays and so forth. And so the more we can do to keep it from being in the system that we have to, or that the city has to deal with, the better off we are. What would it take? How do we, and this may be not only you all, but planning and development and city manager's office and so forth, to determine how do we move forward with, is it possible to move forward with implementing more of these low impact drainage solutions, both on public and private projects?
Yes, ma'am. Galveston is so different from all the cities that I worked in. When I talk to the developers and explain concepts that would reduce cost for their development and also take care of the runoff, keep the development from flooding their development and the streets, they have been very open. I've talked to Jerome Karam, I've talked to the Patels, I've talked to the Gandhis, I've talked to pretty much everyone. Not a single person walked out of the meeting. And the key thing for the success is we being united internally as the team. So engineering and public works works very closely with planning and development team. We are kind of joined at the hip, and Tim Tegens and me, they see the inspiration and enthusiasm when Tim Tegens and Catherine Gorman and I explain to the developers the concepts of low impact development. And they see how united we are, and we explain it from a very technical perspective. And we give them cost numbers, and they go and do their own calculations and find out that it's more cost effective for them to do low impact development. And so we don't have difficulty in convincing the development community, because what we have found is most of our, almost all our developers are well educated. Some of them have PhDs, and this is like by far the most scientific development community that I've ever worked in. And when I say low impact development, oleander development, I didn't have to explain it to them. They explained it to me. So hats off to our developers. Did I answer your question, ma'am?
Sort of.
I'm sorry.
Are all those parking lots that developers have put in the last 2 years are permeable surfaces that collect the rainwater?
So I have been against permeable porous pavement. The reason being, we have a lot of beach sand in Galveston that goes and fills up these pores. What we are actually proposing is a concept called paver drain. The pavers are not porous, but the joints between adjacent pavers have fine gravel, and the water goes between the gravel and then ends up getting detained 2 feet below the surface. So that's what the developers have been more agreeing to the paver drains. And as far as the last 2 years, a year back, I met with the Patels, I met with the Gandhis, and the design has already been finalized for some hotels on Seawall. We are using multiple concepts. So the new hotels that are going on Seawall that have been in design the last few years are going to have the paver drain rather than the permeable pavers. But I do appreciate what you brought up. And Mr. Jerome Karam on Falstaff, he had a challenge. So me and Catherine Gorman and Tim Tegens planning, we got together. I came up with this concept, the bioswales, and we got our first bioswale in Galveston at the Falstaff building on the 69th Street, 69th Street area, where they came up with a big storage basin. There, the perfect application was to have below ground pipes, and Shellmark did the design, and they've been very pleased. And I believe they published that low impact development concept in the Galveston Tribune. Oleander, they used a lot of bioswales and landscape. We are trying to do that, ma'am, also on city projects. So you're going to be seeing Galveston turning green because remember a couple of years back when you asked the question, are we going to have trees and landscaping on our street projects? I was saying, hallelujah. I was hoping someone would ask this question. I instantly emailed all my engineers and said, this is the 11th commandment. Thou shalt have permeable landscapes, trees, and green technologies in all of our projects. And ma'am, you said, is it going to happen? It's already happening. It has happened. And I've been frequently visiting these sites. It is just that some of these don't appear apparent, like bioswales. You see those beautiful palm trees and oleanders and a few bushes. But right below that landscape is an awesome bioswale. And that's the same concept in paved drains. I hope I answered this. Thanks for giving me a second chance, Dr. Cole.
Thank you. That's encouraging.
Oh, you're welcome, ma'am.
Jason, you had a question?
Yes, thank you, Daniel, for your enthusiastic presentation. And it was so good that I would like to see a copy of it. If you could send it to me or have Janelle send it to me, I would appreciate it. Because I mean, that's one of the major questions that I get in District 4, especially about that South Shore area. And I would love a chance to review it and be able to provide an update on it.
Yes, sir. The South Shore has taken a lot of focus with the engineering and public works team, and we are hoping that this grant will happen, and we do have a backup plan also. We'll share it in the near future after my team releases the shackles off my hand to explain it.
All right, thank you.
I just want to point out something too. These drainage projects, as you can see, are extremely complex, and they take years to design, to implement, to fund. We started these basically, we've been talking about this 4 or 5 years ago, basically. So you'll hear people say, what are we doing about drainage? They don't see anything happening immediately. Every project we're undertaking now has the drainage component to it, and it all feeds into this master system that's going to eventually have the pumps in it. So you'll get some incremental improvements with the projects we're doing now, 43rd, 45th. You're getting some incremental improvements. Part of that is just lowering the levels of the street to retain more water in the street versus putting it in the businesses. I mean, there's a whole lot of little things that are going on with this that ultimately will end up with the pumps. But it takes years to get this accomplished. Unfortunately, the city of Galveston got a late start on this for whatever reason. None of us were here, but it got a late start. But we're started now, and we're moving down this path, so that's a good thing. It's also important to acknowledge that at the end of the day, no amount of pumps, no amount of money that we spend is going to eliminate flooding on the island. What Daniel is proposing will greatly improve drainage, and it will hasten drainage, and it will eliminate some smaller amount of flooding. But you will never 100% eliminate flooding on an island like Galveston with our flat terrain and our system the way it is. We're going to greatly improve it. We're going to greatly enhance it, but we're never going to 100% eliminate it. So I just want to make that very, very clear. No engineer, not even the great Daniel Christodos, can totally guarantee and eliminate drainage, although he has done a yeoman's task. That's why we're doing things that are a little bit off, and the other thing is that it's hard to compare Galveston to other big areas that have vast amounts of land that they can dig retention and detention. I doubt very seriously it would be very healthy or good for Galveston for us to start digging big, deep holes on very valuable property, especially since there's not a whole lot of places for even that water to go. So we're having to go about this in a little bit different manner, and the pumps are going to help some. Biggest thing that's going to help us now is going to be the backflow component of these pumps, which Daniel pointed out with the duckbill drainage outfalls. We've tried non-mechanical outfall backflows, and they did not work just because the water has gotten too high in the bay and in the bio. But I just want to be very clear and manage expectations on this. Very expensive project. It's going to improve and enhance drainage. It's not going to eliminate flooding. So, but it will certainly hasten it. We're not going to sit here for hours when we have massive rainstorms with flooded streets. It's going to move that water pretty quick. And the other thing it's important to know, everything we're doing, we're trying to improve drainage. But when you start moving that much water through our drainage system, it's going to highlight other deficiencies in our drainage system, mainly due to its age. So when we do these street projects, that's why you're seeing a drainage component in every one. You'll hear people say, well, they replaced all the drainage, it still floods here. Well, that's true. There's a little bit more retention under the streets, which will help in smaller events, and you've seen that in smaller events. The other thing is we're in, like 45th Street, the original phases of 45th Street, the whole south end of 45th Street used to just run north, and it would just stack up water as you started getting to O and P and those areas. If you look on 45th Street now, there's drain catches going down that are catching some other lateral systems. As we increase the pumping capacity and the movement water in those systems, that will greatly enhance and improve drainage on 45th Street. But right now, we're just slowing that flow as best we can so it all just doesn't pile up at Broadway and back up and flood everything, basically from Broadway back to Avenue P. So we're trying to measure out the water as it hits these systems, and then we're trying to get it out of these systems. But there is a whole lot of work to be done. We got a late start with it. This stuff probably should have been started when I was in high school, but it wasn't. But we're on it now, and it's as Daniel, to be as charismatic as Daniel is, we ain't stopping this train now. We're moving.
Sounds good. And kind of need to wrap up, but Jackie, go right ahead.
Yeah, just one thing based on what Brian said about this being good for the city. We have nothing here whatsoever about the drainage west of 61st Street. And what I would like to see in the future soon, it'd be a start on a master drainage plan that incorporates the drainage on the west end. Thinking about the drainage on the west end and incorporated in that is what streets we can raise without flooding properties in order to provide to help with the flooding on the west end. And they're not getting pumps. So let's deal with that, and we can plan, we can think about this and set a date to start planning on that. I would appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am, Dr. Cole. I'd like to respond to that. The drainage master plan that we are planning to implement in 2021 is going to explicitly look at the west end. Based on the reconnaissance that our public works team has done, the elevation is pointing the wrong direction towards the beach. So it might need a combination of filling, raising the elevation, putting some drainage culverts, as well as pump stations on the west end. Pump stations are not an exception and exclusive to the east end. It is also an option, innovative option for the west end.
Thank you.
You're welcome, ma'am.
I wanted to thank you very much. And I tell you, Daniel, drainage sometimes can get dry and boring. And I tell you, your presentation, it gets people excited. So I appreciate your passion and your expertise on this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. I really appreciate that.
All right. Thank you. And Council, moving on, we have a few more items to get to before we go into our executive session. Janelle, if you could read item 3D, please.
3D, discuss the 2020